Hello, everyone. I'm Tracy, and thank you so much for being here. And if you're here for the live chat, thank you so much for participating. I love hearing your comments and questions and getting that interaction. Today, we have a very special guest. I will be speaking with Clyde Holokai, and he is a retired Assistant Police Chief from the Maui Police Department. And he's been a really great resource in understanding what really happened the day of the tragedy on August 8th. If you're new here, please subscribe before you leave. And for everyone, please like, comment, and share. That really helps to get the word out to as many people as possible. And if you would like to support my efforts and contribute to this investigation I'm conducting, you can send a super chat or you can donate through my Venmo link, and I'll put that in the description. So without further ado, here is my interview with Clyde Holokai. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Tracy, and thank you for being here today. And I have a very special guest. I have retired Assistant Police Chief Clyde Holokai, and I've interviewed him before. And so I'll link that interview in the description if you guys want to catch up and hear what we said at that time. But this is more of a follow-up. So um, everybody, this is Clyde, and thank you so much for your candor and for speaking out, because this tragedy is not over. There's still so many people asking, about what happened, and a lot of people are still suffering from losing loved ones and for losing their entire home and possessions. So thank you so much for helping me keep this story alive and for standing up for the victims of this horrible fire. So one of the complaints I got from the first interview is I didn't ask you, because people want to know, how do you think this fire started and how do you think it was so destructive?
I'm not sure how the fire started, to be honest. But how so destructive? I believe it was a combination of the brush that was supposed to have been cut down after the 2018 fire, which wasn't, and the incredible winds. I remember that day I had put up a American flag outside my house. I was all proud. That was my final thing I was going to do when I'm renovating, and the winds bent the base of it. I
Mhm.
have a friend who went out there to help fight the fire with his water truck. And he said he had to accelerate to 70 miles an hour just to keep ahead of the flames.
Oh, okay.
Never seen flames just overtake things so fast.
Right.
Uh, Stories, but again and again about the wind. And one other thing that people might not realize is when the wind is strong like that, we cannot launch the helicopter. And when
Okay.
we fires on the west side, that's a big way we fight it. We launch the helicopter, it goes with the bucket into the ocean, was right next to the mountains, and it starts dumping the ocean water onto the fire zone. And we couldn't do that.
Yeah. Was it unusual? Were the winds unusual or was it typical?
No, no, no. Those were, I mean, I live in Wailuku. It's right on the other side of the mountain where Lahaina
Oh,
was burning. And the winds over here were just horrible. So I can imagine being out there
yeah.
on that typical day.
Yeah, I did an interview with someone that survived, barely escaped. He said when he was in his car, he said that the winds were very unusually strong with unusually strong gusts to the point where when he got into his car, it felt like his car was about to lift off the ground.
Wow. I don't doubt that. Driving on that side on the poly when the winds come through,
Yeah.
and my I used to have a big Tundra, and it felt like it was shaking my car.
Yeah, that's just incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he also said that he sent me some videos of these bushes moving in a very kind of, it's hard to explain. I'll send it to you, but it didn't seem natural, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Okay. Another topic I'm starting to look into, because I've had some people come forward and said that they saw these law enforcement or these officers, but they didn't have the MPD patch and they weren't identified, didn't have their names. Have you ever heard of crisis actors, people coming in and posing to be law enforcement or posing to be officials in a time like this?
No, I haven't. What would they? What would they be there for?
Um, I was thinking possibly they were doing some of the roadblocks.
I will say this: that since this chief took over, one of the things that he's done, he's allowed our officers to pretty much wear whatever they want.
Oh,
So
okay.
with the class A's, which is the more formal, with the short sleeve and the patch on the left shoulder, and you have others who wear the long sleeve, and
Mhm.
some BDU pants, and some with regular class A's material. They can wear different belts, and they've started wearing this one vest that's over everything. It's supposed to help with their back. Um, I haven't noticed if there was any that I've ever seen without the patch, but
Mhm.
in situations like this, that's why it's so important for everybody to be uniform and wearing the same thing. Yeah, because if there are ones without patches and stuff, then it's obvious to pick out.
Right, that is suspicious if they're not wearing their proper
Yes,
identification. It is
yes.
odd. Okay, all right. So now we know that Chief Pelletier was not in the EOC, and he said a number of times that that is his job to be manning the EOC because he can give orders from different departments. So why do you think he was not at the EOC that day?
I have no idea why he wasn't. I could guess, and I will say this, that what we have is policy versus past practice. Now, when there's no policy, you fall back on what was past practice. What did we do prior? So, for example, in this situation, for him to be at the EOC was not written in policy, but for every other emergency, that's what past practice was. Now, those two words might seem like nothing for somebody who's not aware of what they mean, but they're everything when you go to court and you got to defend your actions.
Mhm.
You need a reason to say, I didn't do it. Here's why. You can always say, do it. You could even go violate policy if there's a good reason. If there's a reason you did to save somebody's life, to make something more efficient, something down those lines. So when he comes out, and I know he said before that, there's nothing in writing. I didn't have to be at the EOC. He's right. He didn't have to be. But when we look at the situation, he should have been. He
Mhm.
should have, not only because it's past practice, but the EOC, what people forget is that is the hub of all the information. Now, for you to go and open what he called the DOC, the Department Operations Center, now that's one that I have manned myself, but not when we don't have a representative from the chief's office up at the EOC. Football terminology, right? So it would be like, I'm heading into the Super Bowl. I'm the coach, gonna call the plays, but I'm gonna stay home and I'm gonna have one of my players on the field tell me what's happening, and then I'll
Mhm.
make a decision. You see how inefficient that is, right?
Right.
So
Right.
at the EOC, you'll have stakeholders from every important department within the county. So you'll have fire, medics, in this situation, HECO. At one point, I remember them even after our representative from Robert Sawyer, our buses, so that when we have to evacuate system, people, we get them on the buses. So whoever is going to be considered important is going to be there. It's as easy as looking across the table to our Hawaiian Electric counterpart and say, those lines are blocking our people in. Are they energized? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Answer immediate. And then you can go ahead and give out the orders to our people who are in the field trying their best to save lives, and they're doing it blind. So ultimately, do we want, I mean, yes, he didn't have to be there, but as a chief, he should have wanted to be there. He should have wanted to be there to make a difference. People were dying.
When he was asked why he wasn't at the EOC, he said that the appropriate person was there because if he were there, he couldn't do his other job. So what do you think he was referring to when he said his other job?
He had alluded to other people when he said that of running the department. At that point in time, what job is more important than being right there at the EOC? I ask you. None. None. Our department, and there's something that was brought to my attention. I haven't read it, but I understand that previous chiefs has used this for bargaining tools, where it says in our Hawaii revised statutes that in a time of an emergency, the chief is the liaison between the department and the community, the county building. So you can understand how that's common sense, right? You would think so. So if he's the liaison, where should he be? Right with everybody who's the decision makers. Now, when he talks about people that are qualified, let's look at this, okay? And I'm going to say this, I've been very critical of the actions and stuff of the chief, but you're going to hear me say something that usually, in a perfect world, you have different trainings you need to go to prior to even stepping foot in the EOC. Emergency management training, all different ones, including drills and things that we do within the EOC. I didn't go through the emergency management training. Not one person in that department, in this department now, has that. So technically, in writing, nobody would have been certified or otherwise ready to get into. However, I will say this: if he or his administrative staff had gone in there and at least tried, I would respect them for that.
Right.
That didn't happen. You can always say, you know what, we don't have the right training, but this is an emergency. I need guys up there. Boom. Why are you going to send people who work our vice unit?
In the EOC.
I got to tell you something that I was a year in vice as a lieutenant. I cannot begin to tell you how to run a complicated narcotics investigation. I cannot, because it takes somebody that's very specialized. Those people, though, as good officers as they are and well-meaning, they're not trained in emergency management. Why would you send them?
Yeah.
That makes a big statement. And he was just sending anybody. So were they qualified? My opinion, no. And here's the thing about when it comes to liability, especially when you're dealing with a situation like this, liability is going to be very high. The senior or the highest ranking officer in the room among police automatically takes that liability. So in other words, if there is a police officer 3 that's up there in the EOC, and I walk in, my old job, I'm the assistant chief. Just my presence there takes the liability off of him and onto me, which is a good thing. I know some people didn't think that, but I thought that as my job as an assistant chief, that was, or anytime I went up the ranks when I was a sergeant, lieutenant, captain, that was something very important because I wanted my people covered. Mm-hmm. How I cover them also is knowing, hey, what decisions are you making and why, right? I'll take it now. Put my name in the report because I know from experience that when I was the other one and I was the officer there and a higher ranking person showed up, but they didn't want to be involved, I know how that made me felt. And it made me not want to make decisions because I was afraid of liability. Now, we all know too that lack of decision making or lack of action can get you in just as much trouble as taking the wrong action.
Right. Yeah. Do you think he considered that? Do you think he was considering his liability when he decided not to show up there? He didn't want to be responsible, or
I'm gonna say this opinion. This is nothing factual, but my feeling is he would have been found out that he wasn't the person he presented himself to our police commission to get hired. It would have been found out that he doesn't know what he's doing.
Right. So something I've more recently found out, because I've been told that he was the incident commander of the shooting in Vegas, but he was not the incident commander. So were you aware that he was not? Because he said so in his interview.
Yes.
He said so at the commander's meeting, right? He said that he was the commander of that. So you knew that he was not in charge of the.
Not for a while. I suspected it for a while because we had went and looked over. We wanted to know who our chief was coming in. And at first, we didn't really dig too deep. We were trusting. But once we started to see different decisions being made, especially after we retired, um, we started trying to look it up on the internet. And he's never mentioned. And there's a page that Las Vegas Metro puts out in honor of that, and they list every officer that was there. He is not mentioned. Um, there's a documentary just came out, and I want to say it's on Discovery Plus. I'm not sure the name of it, but it's about the shooting.
Oh,
And officers that watched. I think it's a 4-part documentary. There's officers who have watched it here, and they said he's in there in like 5 minutes of like episode 3. Doesn't say anything, just background. So, and
Ray
then there was
Spencer was saying here. Ray Spencer was the incident commander. I found a few articles.
there you go. In fact, you know what? There was a politician here. I forget her name. She was in charge of I want to say shucks someplace on a wall, and she had dug that up, and she started posting things on Instagram where it said yes, that person was the incident commander and not him. He did say at one point, I'm not sure which interview this was, but he was the incident commander of the traffic that was outside of the incident.
Okay.
Something to that effect.
Okay. But so it might have been to get the job that he was going for. Maybe sounded better.
Might have been.
That was my hunch.
You know, I know one of the police commissioners that told me that if it ever comes out that he had lied about that, that's grounds for termination. Because he lied about it in order to get the job.
Yeah.
And you would think somebody who was in charge of such a high profile tragedy would know more about how important it is to follow past practice, to be there for your people. You know, our officers to this day not getting any psychological help
for the fires.
I'm friends with several of them, and one of them in particular is friends with one of the assistant chiefs, and he went to him. He said, "We need you guys out there. Our people are hurting. They saw people, the most horrendous things. Our people are hurting. We need to at least see you guys." And you know what the response was? "Oh, we gave you guys an app. Use the app." So the officer told me, he said, "You guys forget already what it's like. This is Hawaii. We need to talk. We need to sit. We need to touch." You know? No.
He does claim to be very for psychological health. I've heard him make statements about how important it is for the department for him. But he could say,
I will say this, that there was a psychologist that we had before that I did not agree with. This psychologist disqualified a young man who I knew very well because he didn't finish college. He didn't finish college within 4 years. It took him 6 years. So he disqualified him for that. I didn't agree. But this chief actually brought back Dr. Dara Ramperstad. He was a longtime psychologist with us. I cannot speak highly enough about him. This man, this man, a few years ago, we had an officer who unfortunately took his life in front of his family, right down the road from my house. This man, Dr. Dara, wasn't even working for us anymore. And he made it a point to call every single one of us. I know he stayed on the phone with me for 20 minutes. I wasn't the primary investigator. It was my guys, so I made sure to go in and make sure I knew that they were okay and stuff. But that speaks volumes. The night of the fire, Dr. Dara calls me up. "Oh, Clyde, I heard what's going on." I said, "Oh, I'm retired." "Yes, but I know you also have strong ties to Lahaina. I'm checking on you." You know, that man on his own money was out here that next day with his group and went right into the burn zone. Chief allowed that. So I must say, as much as, I might disagree with him, I'll give him credit where credit is due. And he got our people help that day. And it was the response I got from my fellow officers was, "Man, I didn't even know who Dr. Dara was. But as soon as he stepped foot wherever he went, there was this peace and calm that came over everybody." So initially, he might have gotten them help and with the right people. And I'm sure I'm sure Dr. Dara's been in touch. Every once in a while, he'll call me or text me, hey, get in touch with so-and-so. I didn't get a good feeling about him. He's one of your guys you wrestle with. Yeah, we train. Okay, get him in the mat. Get him on the mat. So I know initially he was, but after that, it's fallen off. And there's been really nothing for our officers.
Do you know of any recent suicides within the department since the incident, since the fire?
Not within the department. I hear rumors about suicides within, and I'm gonna get to confirm it. So it might not be true. Maybe within the fire department, but again, I haven't been able to follow up on that. And I've heard of from suicides with other people that were affected by the fires, but again, nothing I've been able to follow up with yet.
Okay. All right. So I've been reporting that Chief Pelletier is also the coroner, and I've been trying to let people, know this. Is that standard? Has that happened before?
For the state of Hawaii, yes. The chief is the coroner also. Now, it's come up with Chief Pelletier because he used that as a bargaining chip to get his raise. Now, let me explain to you his role as the coroner. As a detective, or whenever there's any type of death that involves suspicious circumstances, OD, a murder, whatever it may be, you have anyone that's got to go to autopsy, even the car crashes, right? There's a paper that's a request for autopsy. The detective or the investigating officer has to get this paper signed by the chief. That's it. That's his whole extent as a coroner. That's why when he brought it up at the meeting, at the hearing to get a raise, we're all like, you just signed. He has not about the autopsy. He's not even present when the autopsies are done. They're done at a different building. And what happens is we pay clinical labs. We pay for them to have what's the word? The doctors come in and do the autopsies. We have, I believe, right now 3 different doctors on the payroll.
Okay, so they're the ones that determine cause of death, time.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So he just signs off saying, okay.
Yes, their report is independent of the police report.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know how it might seem that it's a conflict of interest.
Right.
On paper, it looks like it, definitely.
Yeah.
But as far as his extent of what he does as a coroner, that's it. He just signs.
Very limited.
That's it. He signs for the request for autopsy, and it ends there.
Okay.
And again,
that up.
Yeah, that was again. He brought it up, so that's why it became a big issue. Now I cannot say if that's the same on every island, but I know for Maui that's what it was.
That's how it's been.
Yeah, as a detective, I'll need to get his signature. That's it.
Okay, but he doesn't determine the cause of death and
time. And again, those doctors are not hired. They're hired through us, but they're not paid by. They're employed by clinical labs or pathology. Sorry.
Do you happen to know if there was a team of medical professionals and coroners that came in after the fire? Was there an additional support there?
I do know that the federal government has a team, and I want to say it's through FEMA that's all they do. And the only reason I know that is because we're preparing for that when COVID hit, and I was in charge of that. We never had to use them, thank God. But I don't know for sure if they were. I can guess that they were because I know the lab technician very well, and he's very competent. He would have put the request out for that, but I don't know if that's what happened.
You don't know exactly who was sent and all that. Okay. So also I wanted to ask about the reassignment that I played that happened with Ricky Uedoi. So for those of you who haven't seen that video, it was a recording that was taken at a commander's meeting where Ricky Uedoi, who was the head of internal affairs, was reassigned to Molokai, which was a big demotion. It wasn't supposed to go that way. He had already done his tour in Molokai. And then the internal affairs was given to Captain Tom, who was leaving in a month to go to the FBI. And so someone asked who will be taking Captain Tom's position, who was going to be in charge of internal affairs when he goes to the FBI. And the deputy at the time, Charles Hank, said that he would be doing that. Is that something that happens, or was that
No,
unusual?
absolutely not. So let's start off with Ricky's reassignment.
Mhm.
Now, anytime we go to what we call is an outside district, whether it's Hana, Lanai, or Molokai, those are the three outside districts that we serve. It's at the very least, it's for 1 year. Depending on the amount of manpower, you could be out there. I know all guys that were out there for 4 years. Some
Mhm.
people like it, some people don't. When I got promoted to lieutenant, I was sent out to Molokai,
Mhm.
and I enjoyed it. You know, um, Ricky had already been there as an officer for 1 year and as a lieutenant. He did his time. Plus, that's against policy. Our policy specifically says that when it comes to outside rotation, you shall send the junior officer in each grade. Ricky
Mhm.
was the second senior captain at the time.
Yeah.
And when he said he didn't agree with that, we all heard what the chief said, right? I don't care.
Right.
Now, there was another meeting that happened right after that when Ricky went into the chief's office with the deputy
Mhm.
and asked, why is this? Because I said so. Again, well, how long do I have to be there? 2 years. Again, outside of policy. Now, for Ricky, he wasn't about to do that. And I'm fairly certain the chief knew. So that was forcing his retirement.
Right, because he had already done his 2 tours. It was against policy that he gets
It
assigned
was.
to high.
And he did not have an easy time, each one out there. It was hard for him because he's a family man. He was away from his kids, and that's another thing people don't understand is when you go. I was fortunate that I went as a lieutenant. When I went as a lieutenant, I get my own cottage, so my kids could come stay with me for extended periods of time.
Okay.
Sir, you don't. Okay, so he, as an officer, had to stay in the cottages. He didn't see his kids, didn't see his wife. He really had a hard time. And
Mhm.
then back as a lieutenant, that stigma for him, even though he had that cottage, it was still hard for him because his kids are at a different age now. They cannot just come and, mines were young. They could, change school for a little bit. His one couldn't. So he ran into a lot of problems.
Mhm.
Going back would have been having to choose between his family and his job.
Right. So, explain a little bit why having the deputy also in charge of internal affairs, how is that a
Had
problem?
a big conflict of interest.
Mhm.
Internal affairs is supposed to run separate. Now, I will say this that the deputy will sometimes will give them their assignments, but he has no say in what they do. They might report their findings to him, but that's it. They run separate from the department. And the reason that is because there have been times in recent history where they've had to investigate the chief.
Right.
See how if they work for the deputy, it might look like it's corrupt. He's going to take care of your own. Of course, the deputy and chief are friends, which is why he chose him. So it's very important for us to even just to have that appearance of separation. You know, when in fact the captain that investigated the last chief was Ricky.
Mm. Chief Follow.
Found that there's some things that he had to sustain,
Yeah.
but even that one, the deputy would just he would report his findings, but the deputy Ricard never got involved.
Right.
Never got involved. And he was very good with that. And him and Chief Tivo were friends for a long time. He never got involved. He gave him the assignment. Do with it what you will, wherever it takes you. Just let me know.
Yeah.
For lack of, I don't know if that was the exact words, but that's what we got. You know,
Mhm.
and for it to fall under the deputy now controls the investigations.
Mhm.
So you have two people who within 1 day have violated already all sorts of policies, and then they're going to be controlling internal affairs.
Right.
That
Checks and balances at
there's
all.
none. There's no integrity, and it's a breeding ground for corruption.
Right.
Yeah,
to look after.
up.
Do you know what the situation is now? Because I know the deputy is no longer with the department and someone else is. So do you know if they have an internal affairs captain or?
They do. However,
Okay.
what they did was they promoted the acting captain from CID, so Criminal Investigations Division, to the captain of Internal Affairs. Here's where we run into issues. Sometimes there's an internal investigation, which is done by Internal Affairs. There runs concurrent with a criminal investigation that is done by CID.
Okay.
I've been on both sides as an investigator. So here's the problem with that. Internal Affairs can get copies of whatever they want from my criminal investigation. I cannot get copies of what Internal Affairs has. And here's why. If you're the focus of my criminal investigation, what's the first thing I have to do when I sit you down? You have a right to remain silent. You have rights. The internal investigation, you are mandated to give a statement. You have no saying no. So if I went to Internal Affairs and said, hey, this guy didn't want to give me a statement, what did he tell you? Illegal. You can't do it. Okay. Now I know for a fact that this captain had done some criminal cases on some officers, and then was assigned to overlook them. Now that doing the internal, how does that work?
It's too one-sided.
That doesn't work.
Yeah.
He cannot.
Okay. So, yeah, that was something that really took me by surprise that
Yeah,
the
yeah.
position would be in one.
I remember that after that first day when all that happened, we were shocked at the just the level of arrogance and I mean just everything. Just we
Right.
were
He
shocked.
said it kind of like nonchalant, like, oh, I think he's gonna have me help out. It wasn't even like a proper introduction to the
No,
position. It
no,
was most like it wasn't important to have an internal affairs
not
captain.
at all. Especially a captain like that who was vetted, captain who is Ricky had done his time, and he got to where he was at by working, not by knowing having friends,
Yeah.
but by working. And if you really wanted to find out whether he was good to stay there or not, all you had to do is look at his investigations. And he told the chief, if you have questions, you're the chief now. Here's all the investigations. And he didn't want to. His mind was made up already.
Yeah, that had nothing to do with his reassignment. Just
No,
hoping he would retire.
that's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Yeah. Oh, that's just so tragic to hear a career end like that.
They wanted all of us from the beginning. If you remember, I'm not sure if you heard it in my interview, the one that I taped with the first sit down with the two of us, and the deputy tells me, "We know that we cannot get you out unless you do this, this, this." They already researched how to get me out too. That's why I turned to them. I asked them, "You guys want me here or not?"
Mm,
Oh no, we want you here. So okay, well,
right. But they had to do it to make it not seem like they were
yeah,
doing it because they just wanted to. Wow. All right. So that's the main things I wanted to discuss with you. So thank you so much for your honesty and for spending this time with me and sharing your knowledge and your experience with my audience. They really, really appreciate it. There's a lot of interest in what happened then and what's happening now. And so I wanted to thank you because not a lot of people want to step into this position. So I'm very fortunate that I'm able to do this. So thank you so much.
no problem. Can I
And
say something
sure.
before I go? And I only say this because I knew by doing this I'll become a target. And I've seen some of the comments and things like that. And it was brought up in one of my other interviews. What would you say to people who are out there saying that you're only doing this because you don't like the chief? That's a really good question, and it's very fair. It's something that I think I should talk about because I can totally understand why it might seem that way.
Right.
If you look at my interviews, every single one I did, I don't attack him as a person. I, I don't know him personally enough to attack him on a personal level. I do disagree with him on many things professionally.
Mm-hmm.
So you might hear me talk about policy, lack of policy, action or lack of action, but I don't attack him personally. One of the biggest reasons why I retired was that I got to the point where I realized I can do nobody any help in my, I cannot help anybody in my current position. As high as I went, I couldn't help them. I had more power if I retired and I was able to speak out.
Right.
And when I talk about helping people, it's not just the people that are still working that are really good officers. We have a lot, not just officers, but we forget sometimes that there's civilians, there's dispatchers. You know, dispatchers are down to like 13 dispatchers now.
From
Not
what was it?
for 24-hour coverage, 13. I cannot begin to imagine the tough job that they have, and they show up every day. So it's not just officers, but the people of Maui County. If I come off, or if I am doing this, and I'm going to come off in such a way that it's obvious that it's just because I don't like this guy. I'm not doing them any favors. I'm not. I lose all credibility. I lose all integrity with what I'm trying to do. And if you hear me today, I praise them. I'm Dr. Dara.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to say that because I know that it's being said and that's one of the reasons and stuff like that. But again, listen to what I say. It's not a personal attack. It's just we have difficulties, differences in opinion on what should have strong ones. Anyway,
Right. And you did say that a lot of the officers that are active are very fond of him, that he's treated them fairly.
if you're this is the prevailing theme, and this says it all. If you're his friend, you get away with anything. If you're not, he's already made examples.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That explains a lot. All right. So thank you so much, Clyde. I'll
Welcome.
keep you on, but for now, I'll say thank you for everyone who is here. And if you're here for the live chat, thank you so much for participating. I love hearing questions and comments. And Clyde, I hope you will come on my channel again and share some more of your knowledge and your expertise.
Anytime.
And your first interview is very, very well received, and a lot of people are showing interest in these topics we're discussing. And I think I'm probably the only one that's currently keeping up with as far as the law enforcement side. So I really appreciate you allowing me to continue this narrative. So thank you so much. And everyone, I'll see you all soon. Bye.